need for immediate gratification. And that makes this more relevant in terms of harnessing our own power of mind. And we also see a world which is more uncertain. And we also see a world where obviously there's a lot of discussion about what will AI do to us? What is Industry 4.0 do to us? What will automation do to us? I think the answer, if you see many of some of the experts or philosophers who speak, the only thing you can do is, I think all your simple tasks will get automated, but what will not get automated is you being human. So the best response for this is going back to being more human. And to be a more human and a better human, you have to harness yourself, the power of your mind. I think that is what this actually says. And the last thing that it strikes me, Sangeeta, is how closely this reflects the Indian thought, the Indian philosophy, the Indian spirituality, as we all know. And that is one of the things that struck me when I actually went through the first 30, 40 pages. And I went up to search to see what is this background of Tim. And I actually realized in the early 70s, he's actually come to India and under a guru, he learned. And he went back and actually wrote this book.
Wow.
So it's not surprising.
That's really interesting. So since you touched upon spirituality, and I know you're a spiritual person, you're into art of living, you're the part of the Tamil Nadu leadership team. So how would you correlate this book with Indian philosophy? Maybe if you can throw some more light on it, I think that would be an interesting aspect.
It is not obviously explicitly mentioned, even though Tim does give some credit to his years in India, right? One thing which immediately says is exercise your free will on your choice of action, right? Whatever free will you have, you exercise in the choice of action. But there is little point in productivity in actually putting your attention towards outcomes, right? And exactly what this says. If there is a ball which comes in a tennis, so you make sure what is your best shot selection and give it your best. And don't forget about what will happen if I lose this point. What will happen if I lose this game? So that is something which is very relevant.
I'm reminded of the Bhagavad Gita, as you mentioned this. Yes, yeah.
And it also says the learning journey is as relevant as the outcome, right? In fact, very often you say if you negotiate a deal, and even if you lose a deal, don't lose a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. You have a client, a long-term client. If you lose a deal, it's okay. Don't lose a relationship. In a similar way, I think as you live through the day, don't lose a learning. It's okay if you lose an outcome. One outcome is nothing. You have a long career, I think all of us, either we are businessmen or we are in our own professions, we have a long career. The third one, which is also very significant, which Sangeeta also mentioned. See, our scripture says it's very important what is the quality of conversation you have with yourself. And that makes a significant difference, right? It also says, yes, I think everything has its utility. Your wandering mind, your questioning mind has its utility. But it is up to us, our training, our discipline, which will actually make our intellect prevail upon and say that what should be the road ahead, what should be the way ahead. So that also was, I think, very relevant for me. And again, so you make sure that it is like what you say as a consultant, right? Some of us are consultants, I know. So the prophecy says, keep your consultant on tap and not on top, right? So similarly, keep yourself one is useful, keep it on tap, not on top.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Very, very nice and relevant point that you have shared. So I'm now thinking like, since we spoke about S1 and S2, so can you share of an instance from your real life, where you managed to overcome this interference of self-one, and how you went about it also probably.
So we had one instance in my career, and see, we had a client, and all of a sudden, the client had called up and says, "We'd like you to put up a facility in a new location, in a remote location." And it was an ultimatum saying, if you don't do this, there are others who are willing to do it, so you lose. So I was sitting along with my senior colleague, and the first thing that came to my mind was how unfair it is, right? So how can they do it? And the second thing that came to the mind is, what are we going to do? Because we have capacities created elsewhere. And if that capacity is, you have unfulfilled capacities, it's a severe impact on financials. What do we do with the people who have been hired? And so we ranted, and we went on and on. And finally, I think we came to an evening where that evening we sat down and we said, okay, why don't we look at it the other way? What is the compulsion with the client that they have to ask us? Okay. And I think as we asked ourselves, that our perspective changed. So under what compulsion the client is asking us, instead of saying they've been unfair to us? So we said, yeah, I think they are incurring a lot of freight costs. That's a lot of cost for them. And like any other company, I think they would work for their own P&L, their own shareholders. And what is unfair about it? So then we decided what are our options in front of us. So one option is, okay, lose the business, and you will have a facility which will go unutilized. It will have implications in terms of people and labor who've been already recruited. And that's one option. The other option is put up a facility in the remote location, but it'll never make financial sense. So we said, why don't we look at a third option? What price concessions can we give from the current location for them to at least neutralize this ask? And we were able to quickly work out what does it mean. And we thought the third option was the best option. Frankly, we were so excited that we took the flight the next day morning. And within that week, we closed the deal.
Wow.
So this was actually one instance which actually reflected upon, had we been in that zone of self-deprecation, so we would have never come to a solution. So probably one thing which learned is, if there is a problem, first acknowledge and see the problem as a problem, not as who created it, how it got created, what will I do? I think all of this is, mentioned in this book.
Yes,
very nicely.
Yes. So in fact, a wonderful example that you shared, and like two things that really stood out is, shifting your perspective. I think that helps especially when you have this inner chatter and the inner dialogue that is going on in your mind. And the second important concept that you seem to have applied from the book is on the powerful questions. By asking yourself those questions, which enables the shift in perspective. And I think like you said, you had 3 questions and then you came up with the best option. So I think that was like very, very nicely shared. So thanks for this. So now that leads me to ask you, since you're also a coach, right? Do you apply the principles of this book with your team members?
We try to.
Okay.
As much as possible, because I think one thing we do as you lead the daily life, one thing is we all prescribe things on what to do, tell people what to do, how to do. And there is a lot of restraint which is required. And that restraint is part of that coaching. That restraint, that patience is part of that coaching. So one instance is, I think, generally it is very important for us. It is sometimes easier for us to do things ourselves. And there is no learning there because you've already learned. But if you make people have a learning journey and allow them to do it themselves, so that will be enriching. One instance I can tell you, we had a negotiation with a client, and this person was experienced person, but new to negotiation. So this person was, so we had a discussion with a client, and he came to me and said, yeah, on this particular day we will go. I said, I'm not coming. I'm not coming. So then he came back and he screamed, threatened me, saying, why can't you take 2 to 3 hours for me? And I told that person, I will spend 8 hours with you, but I won't come with you. And we actually prepared for that discussion. And we told him how we'd go about and what are the boundaries. It's very important. It's his first deal and he can't go and blotch it. So we defined boundaries. And in fact, a good thing at that point of time was the person with whom he was going to speak on the other side, the client, he was my ex-colleague. So I did speak to that person and said, just because he is new, don't take it for granted. Don't be severe. And this person actually went, it was a big deal. And he came back and he was almost smiling ear to ear and said he clinched it.
Wow.
So it was actually much easier for us to go and do it ourselves. But it is very enabling and a learning experience if we have to have others do it for themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. And as I reflect on what you said, I think you actually empowered the person to, go and get it done by, himself, which I think is again a great trait for the leader. And you made them to think, to see, how they can go and achieve this deal. So I think that was really awesome. Another thing I would like to ask you is, the trust. Trust is something that's so important for a leader, and the team needs to trust you as a leader. And the book also touches upon building trust with the coachee. So from a coaching perspective, how do you think a coach can build trust? And also as a leader, how do you build trust with your team members?
I think if there is no trust, there is no coaching. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The moment trust is lost,
Yes.
everything is lost.
Absolutely.
That
They will not share. Yeah.
So it is very important for you, and it is not just for that session or for that person. That person can be with you for several years and maybe decades. So it is very important to have a trusting relationship with that person.
Right.
And in all your daily dealings, it is important for that person to come to a conclusion that you don't have an ulterior motive.
Yes.
There is nothing ulterior here. You don't have an ulterior motive, and you have that person's interest and not your own personal interest.
True.
So that is very important to convey. Your genuineness should definitely come out. And unless that genuineness is there, it is very difficult. And some conversations, of course, when you say coaching, I think becomes pretty delicate, right? So especially if it is a performance review, all of us go through that harrowing experience in April every year, right?
Yeah.
So if you go through a performance review, it is difficult, okay? And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't go well. You accept what the other person says, don't accept. I think it is very important for us to actually spend time and conduct in a way you have to be very clear. Unless that person realizes, there is no change. Right?
Yeah.
And it is what this book also says. So the self too is already empowered. And all of us are capable of learning ourselves. The power of self-learning is immense, right? So it is very important for us to come to or the other person to come to a conclusion. Yes, this is what that person needs to change. So first of all, don't prescribe, right? And second, I think as Sangeeta mentioned, it's a very fine art in terms of how you ask questions. Very often and even in everyday life, not necessarily in a coaching session, somebody comes and asks you how to do. And probably one of the best answers is a question back, right? It's easy to prescribe, but a question back would make that person grow.
Yeah.
If you prescribe, it will make the person do the task.
Yeah.
Okay, a question back will make that person grow. Yeah. So I think it even in a sensitive exercise like performance review. So you have to spend time, ask the questions to realize, and in most of the cases it works. In some cases it doesn't. Most of the cases it works. You keep asking questions, bouncing questions. And at least I've seen in 70% of the cases, right? At least 70% of the cases. If you have a list of 4 or 5 observations you want to share, and you ask the person, because all of us we are able to reflect on ourselves. That person, at least in 70% cases, that list is there in full, right? So they are able to realize. So it's like, and in a game, it is very obvious. You are supposed to change, you don't change, your scores show. But when you sit and reflect, and on a day-to-day basis, it's very difficult to realize. That's what the book also says. But if you sit with that person and realize, that person will actually come out and say that, yes, these are the things which went well, these are the things which did go well. There will always be some blind spots in a person that he or she may not realize. But it is rarer than we think, right? It is typically rarer than what we think.
That's right.
And ultimately, I think if you go to, if you're a coach or if you're giving a feedback, there is a litmus test, right? If that person goes out of the room, does that person go out of the room thinking about what we discussed and how to act on the feedback? Or does that person go about thinking the way you gave the feedback? If they think about the way you gave the feedback, you've lost the problem, right?
True.
If they think about what was discussed and what is the essence of the feedback, then there is the instigation of change.
Yeah, I think that is a very, very wonderful example that you shared. Yeah, thanks for that. I'm also just, thinking, since the book talks about listening, any thoughts, any real life experiences of when the listening is effective, when, it didn't go too well, anything from your vast experience on listening?
Yeah, I think with family members, it's the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Workplace, it's a little easier. But I think typically, all of us will have to be better listeners, especially if you have to be better leaders. And I'm sure as we go up, all of us in this room are senior people. You realize that as you grow up, the less and less we control, right? Definitely the less and less we control. There are a lot of things which happen, and you are not the direct person who is pulling the strings. So whether we like it or not, there are some tasks which we love to do, and there's a machine which you'd like to adjust. There's an Excel which you'd like to populate. There's something which you'd like to code. Forget about all that, right? Beyond a point, we are not the people who are pulling the strings. So you have to go to the other side and you have to necessarily listen to the people and try to see what is it you would be of help. Okay. You are a supporting person. You can review, you can say these numbers are wrong, be disappointed, all that is fine. Ultimately, I think we have to be supportive, because I don't think we'll be able to accomplish as individuals anything beyond a point. And at that point of time, what is most important is what you listen. Okay. what you listen is not just words, what you listen in entirety. And we have to be very, very keen listeners. And of course, there are many books on body language and all that. But heart to heart listening is
Right.
what helps.
Right. Wonderful, wonderful. So one last question from my side to you would be, what is your opinion on self-coaching versus working with a professional coach?
See, I think we need resources, right? We need resources. We need a guru.
Come on.
Right? It is simplistic to think and lack of humility to think, yes, we don't need help. Very often we need help. And the help need not be another person. So when you say self-coach, self-reflection itself is a coach. Going and seeking other resources, including books, whatever, videos, all that is resources. So I think it works both ways. But at some point of time, all of us carry some blind spots. And for a blind spot, you need an external.
Right. Yeah, very well said about that. Thank you. So I think looks like the questions are coming. So what do you think? Looking ahead, how relevant will the inner game philosophy be in shaping the next generation of leaders in India? Asfar from Sri City is asking this question. So like you said, and my perspective is that it's timeless wisdom, like you rightly said. So I think it is relevant. Do you have anything to share on this?
Many organizations. See, harnessing the mind is a very big topic, right? It's a very, very big topic. And honestly, it's a shame that these are not taught in schools. You have physics, you have accountancy, you have chemistry, you have mathematics, you have computer coding, all of that is taught in schools and colleges. This most important aspect, living, how to live, the art of living is not taught. And it is very relevant. And as I mentioned, I think it is even more relevant in the world we move in, with more uncertainty, more sources of anxiety, more sources of junk information. It is very important for us to do. It is a life skill.
The next is a question for you. How can leaders in manufacturing balance the technical and human aspects of work to reduce the interference and help teams perform at their full potential? Bhaskar from Chennai wants to know about this.
See, when you say coaching, there are many aspects of coaching. Okay, I understand what is being said, technical aspect. There are many aspects of coaching. Typically, you say mentoring is basically being in the system, grandfathering what is happening in the organization and telling people how things work here, what is the culture. That is one part of mentoring. The second part is tutoring, which is what is being spoken about in terms of the technical aspects, whether in manufacturing or elsewhere. Tutoring is easy. One person comes and asks, okay, how do I do this? So you have resources to tell, you have training programs to go. I think it is very easy for us to tell. And you can refer how to gain skills. The third aspect of coaching is challenging, which is very important, right? So obviously an organization has ambitions and aspirations, and how do you fulfill in part or in full any of those if there is no challenging? And that is part of any coach, right? Either in sports or elsewhere. And the fourth aspect is what is critical here, what is being told, which loosely is called counseling. And that word is actually very wrongly used many times. But it is actually an inner resolution. The fourth aspect is the inner resolution. That inner resolution, whether you are in the manufacturing industry, IT industry, service industry, anywhere, is relevant.
Thanks for that. There's one more question for you. It says from Vijay Lakshmi, having led turnarounds and M&As, what role does inner clarity and self-awareness play when leading organizations through uncertainty and disruption?
M&As typically are very stressful, right? Stressful for both the organizations, right? Because the first thing, you have, whenever there is an M&A, you have a word called synergy, which has a very negative connotation there. And synergy means you don't need as many people, okay? But shepherding an M&A or any turnaround is very important from a point of view of having a vision, communicating, and most importantly, handling the people's anxieties, handling the people's difficulties. I'm sure everybody will have, it's in a very uncertain phase. And I mean, I'm hardly an expert in M&A. Okay? I've undergone M&A. So if you are saying I've undergone anxieties, okay? But as you go through it, handling this is more important. And you again have a self one, you again have a self two. And it comes back to the same thing. Are we in the zone? Are we in self two? Or are we in the... There are a lot of people who actually, the moment they hear M&A, they want to jump ship. Okay? They can't take the uncertainty. And quite often M&A has a lot of opportunities. I have seen at least several instances where you had some very good opportunities for people where an M&A occurs. But you will have to see that in perspective.
Yeah, Pavitra is asking, today's volatile business world,